Right, good afternoon. It's now 2 o'clock by various clocks and watches in this room. We'll commence the meeting of Governance and Audit Committee. Start with number 1, apologies for absence. I don't think there are any, but I'm sure Ashley's on his way.
I don't know whether it's just coincidence or not, but I just realised I came to an accident on the A52 that stopped vehicles moving. So
Well, he's actually the only one that's not here. He's the only one that isn't here at the moment. So we'll await. I'm sure he's on his way. All right, item number 2, disclosure of interests. Members are asked to disclose any interest in matters for consideration at the meeting. There does not appear to be any, but if you find at a later time that you have one, you can always mention it then. Item 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September 2021. These have been circulated. That's me. There is one amendment to which will be done. Councillor Breeder Ray Griffin was an actual member of the committee because she was a substitute and not a non-committee member in attendance, and that will be corrected. No other person has mentioned anything to the Democratic Services, so I'm assuming that the minutes are okay. Has anybody got any further comment? Oh, Whittingham.
Assumption, I was just going to propose them as an accurate record.
Thank you for that. Have we a seconder? Thank you, Jackie. All those in favour? I think that's unanimous of those that's here. Thank you. Item 4, updates from previous meeting. The only one we've got is the adding to the work programme, the planning service review in December, which has been put on the work programme now, so that has been actioned. Item 5, internal audit progress report and continuous assurance report. That is Rob Audit, I think. Yes, you're looking well. Presumably you're going to do the 5A first.
That's right, Chair.
We'll deal with 5B when we've excluded the press and public.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So this progress report is to update members as to where we are with progress against the 21-22 internal audit plan, and also provides a summary of the reports that's been finalised since the last committee meeting. There are 5 reports that have been finalised since the last committee. 4 are included in this progress report, and then there is a 5th report, which is the follow-up, and it's a separate agenda item which we'll come on to later. So starting on page 4 of the report is the local authority searches. You'll see that that's a reasonable assurance opinion, which is a positive amber opinion. That's been derived on the basis of the 2 medium actions that have been raised and also 1 low priority action, all of which have been agreed by the management team. So I'll just quickly run through the medium actions. So the first medium, the authority has a time frame of 22 days with regards to completing a search. There is a government target of 10 days for each individual search. So as part of our testing, we sampled 10 searches. We identified on 4 occasions these have been completed outside of the 22-day target that are set by the authority. The second medium point, there was also a couple of cases where there was missing audit trail with regards to the registration and deregistration in the process. And also there was a couple of cases where the changes made to the land registry had not been independently reviewed and validated to confirm they were fit for purpose on those changes. And then the one low priority was with regards to there was no formal policy for land charges. So if I can just pause and take any questions you may have on this report before I move on to the next one, Chair.
Mark Whittington.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, when I was reading through this section, I saw we were still at reasonable assurance and there was still seems to be some issues that have been identified. Like you, Mr. Chairman, I'm a member of the FEDCO committee, and at our last meeting on the 7th of September, we received a report which indicated that all the issues with local authority searches have been resolved. So there just seems in my mind to be a little bit of a disconnect between this report and our report that went to FEDCO. So I'm just wondering if the auditors have got any context they can sort of help us with to try and understand this. Thank you.
Yeah, mine's okay. Oh, thank you. Oh, I like it. Right. Sorry about the little technical interference, including me knocking things about. That was a very good point, Mark. It did come to FEDCO and we did have a satisfactory report, and this sort of alleviates that somewhat. Richard would like to come in.
So Alan will kind of fill in the blanks, but I think it's just a timing issue. There's been significant improvement in the service of land charges since the audit was done. Partly the audit findings validated the issues and concerns management had identified previously. And I think the report that Councillor Whittington is referring to was a progress report that confirmed there'd been an injection of resources into that area and there'd been a significant increase in the turnaround times. I think it's 2.4 was reported, 2.4 days. So it's just a sequencing of events. So the audit was done prior to the works that had been started to embed. The report that went to the Finance Committee updated the committee on the progress that had been made, and the follow-up that internal audit colleagues will do on this will validate the direction of travel that's been established. So I think it's just a sequencing that has been referred to.
Thank you for that explanation. Are you happy with that, Mark? Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies for being a couple of minutes late to this meeting. We received two sets of this report. We received the agenda, which was incomplete with many items to follow, and then we received the agenda supplement that had most of those, if not all of those items included. But that included a revised internal audit progress report. Can you tell me what the alterations were between the first report and the second report? And specifically, are there any changes on this particular part of the report? Because I naively read the report I was sent originally, not knowing there was a replacement report.
Thank you. Would you like to answer that? No? I must admit I didn't spot that there were two separate ones. Adam Stokes.
Yes, looking at the difference between the reports, there are no differences. I've got the two reports in front of me. There are no differences to those reports.
Can I help, Mr. Chairman? The clarification was there was a erroneous job title that was referenced in the original. I think it talks about the head of commercial. I think it's head of commercial assets or something like that, but actually it's the head of corporate operations. It was the assigned officer for some of the actions that we'll talk about when we go into the exempt session in terms of the income and banking audit. So it was just a confirmation of the correct post holder for those actions.
If I might follow up, if we are going to be sent pages and pages and pages of reports which are supposedly fresh reports, can we please have a guidance notice to say what has changed so that we don't spend all night burning the candle trying to find out what on earth it is that has changed? Because if it's such a trivial change, it could have just been brought here and we could have just marked it on our notes, especially in that it's in the private session.
Councillor Ford.
Okay, just following on the questions about searches, I must admit I was a little bit confused about it. I know we have a time scale of 22 days, but I noticed the government target's 10 working days, and I'm still a little bit confused with Councillor Whittington's comments. Are we on programme to meet our 22 days? Because obviously the audit report said we failed to meet that. I also think I know it's not in our jurisdiction to set the timescale, but 22 days does seem a bit excessive to me when the government's target's 10. And I realise to keep the housing market going, searches need to be retained quite quick. So I just wondered, I know the Deputy Chief Executive, I don't know whether he can answer the question, what steps are we actually taking to improve the service? Because it seems at the moment to me, we're delivering a pretty poor service. We set it at 22 days, and I'm not sure whether we're meeting that or not. We clearly didn't in this audit report, but we ought to be doing better. So I would like sort of some assurance that we are trying to make improvements.
I think the clarification there is the day this audit was done, and we've had an update to Fedco that says that it's a lot shorter than this time, and we're, in fact, they said 4 days, in my opinion, and that is better than the government target. Alan Robinson.
Thank you, through you, Chair, but just for clarity, there has been a significant improvement in the performance, Councillor Wood. So we're now looking at less than 5 days, as when we took it to governance and to the Fedco committee, it was around 4 days. It's now less than 3 days. So we're seeing that continuous improvement. We have found additional resources, thanks to my colleague, the Section 151 officer, but now we've also, alongside that, we've reviewed the processes and procedures, working with colleagues from another local authority to really make sure that those performances stay good. But so, yeah, we're way below the 10 days and the 22 days now. The performance is, as you know, is excellent at the moment, and that's due to the extra resources, but also a reduction in some of the demand as well. We have to accept that the demand has gone down a little bit as well. So we're just trying to make sure we've got the right resources with the right process aligned to the demand, but we're getting there.
Right, so I think we're all happy on that little section. Can we go on to the next section now then, Rob?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair. So the next audit is the housing compliance. So this actually focused on gas, electrical, Legionella, asbestos, and also fire safety. I think it's worth mentioning this is actually phase 2 of a review. So we performed an audit in 2021 with regards to the same area. This did raise some rather serious issues, hence the reason that we came back and did another review and phase 2 this year. So a lot of the work that has gone through with regards to the systems, processes, including the implementation of the new propeller system. And although lots of work in this area has strengthened some of the control framework, what you will see is that we've still given a negative opinion, which is a partial assurance. And that's on the basis of the 2 high priority actions that we've raised and also 4 medium. There is an agreement with the management team and they have accepted all those actions, and we've got revised implementation dates and new with regards to officers who are going to take those forward and implement them. So I think it's just worth mentioning, so some of the links, some of the issues that we've raised here are very much directly related to the rollout of the propeller system and uploading the remaining information. So the first high priority action, so there is a new training matrix for health and safety and also for compliance. It just actually now needs rolling out to staff so they know what they're doing, when they're doing the process. So the matrix is all established. It's just a case of actually getting officers trained up to deliver. The second high priority action, so we sampled 20 properties to ensure that they had an electrical test within 5 years, which is the defined regulations. 6 properties out of that 20 hadn't been done within the 5 years. One of them dated back actually 11 years when they'd last had the electrical inspection. There was a further 5 properties where there was no certificate actually available to the internal auditors to confirm when the last test had been performed. The medium ones, so there was no asbestos strategy, or well, there was an asbestos strategy, however, it had not been reviewed to confirm it still remained fit for purpose since 2014. There was also a lack of documented procedures for water hygiene stroke Legionella. The final 3 mediums, these very much all do link back to the propeller system, again, which can be actioned once the data is available and has been uploaded into the system. So I think it's all around, and these were around monitoring the safety checks, remedial action once an inspection of a property has been performed, and also the performance management reporting side that comes out of propeller. So I think overall it's fair to say processes are there. It is just a case of waiting for that data to be uploaded, and then you can actually ignite the propeller system and deliver on these 3 controls, medium controls. I'll pause there and take any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On housing compliance, what continuing gaps in control framework is there, and what's being done?
Thank you very much, Chairman. When we first looked at where we were with the audit in November 2020, the key finding report actions was that there were 6 high, 8 medium and 1 low, and in addition 35 key actions. At October 2021, and I thank you for asking the question, it's good for me to be able to report that we've got 2 high and 4 medium actions. And the headline from the audit this year, as has been said, we found the council has strengthened its control framework over the last 12 months in relation to compliance. And the figures of compliance now stand that we are at 99.29 for gas. So that leaves us 33 properties that aren't compliant, and we have legal processes to strengthen access to get those services booked. Electrical, which has been aforementioned by the auditors, we're now up to 52.84% compliant, and we're on target, as I've mentioned also at full council, to be 100% by March. Legionella's now is 100%, as is asbestos inspections. Our fire risk assessments are now at 100%, and the programme for works, particularly signage and indeed fire door checks, is well underway. We have another meeting with the regulator this Friday, and I'm sure the committee will be pleased to know that we are well ahead of their expectations for Friday. Propeller will help us, as aforementioned,
And we have a programme through Professional Officer Strength, which is being rolled out between now and Christmas. And indeed, we're looking at further IT strengths straight into the new year. I hope that gives confidence to everybody as to where we actually are and answers your question.
Oh, it is now, sorry. It says here about the training matrix for asbestos. When is the training going to be delivered? Is that when they've got going with this new system? Will the training be given so they can do what they're supposed to do? There's no documented procedures, it said at all, for the asbestos. Yeah, thank you.
I'm pleased to be able to report that they are already starting to be implemented. We actually started the programme at the beginning of October, Chairman.
Thank you, thank you. Councillor Zuwally.
Thank you. There is mention of Propeller here, but that the management reports aren't currently being produced on it. It went in July, so when will all of the reports be finally, when will the piece of software be populated? Because given the concern around the various issues, I would have hoped that there would have been a resource put in to get this up and running as quickly as possible.
Do you want me to answer, Chairman? Thank you. So Propeller is now very nearly fully loaded, and we now have the personnel in place, and I would hope that I will be able to share some of the findings of its strengths with you on subsequent meetings. And I would expect that I'm talking about results of that to be descriptive before December.
Thank you. So by December, the Propeller will be populated and it will be being used. That's the go live date, if you like.
All being well.
Can you repeat that, Robert? I think.
I'm hoping that the first quarter of Propeller's introduction into the monitoring of, and correlation of things, we will actually get the first report of the first quarter by the end of December.
You're not puzzled, Councillor Woolley. Yeah, happy with the answer. Right. Well, we'll ask Mark Whittington now then.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. One of my questions has already been asked by Councillor Johnson. And my second one was going to be on the electricity safety checks. And I appreciate, and it's really great news that sort of in terms of the gas compliance, we're nearly there and we're 100% compliance with asbestos, fire and Legionella. What's so specific about the electricity safety that means the compliance is currently only at 52%? Because I'm still obviously a little bit concerned that it seems as if looking at the sample the auditors did, that quite a few of these checks haven't been done for quite some time. So just asking if there's something specific about it, the electric safety checks that means that it seems to be behind where the rest of them are. My second question refers to the fact that obviously in the sort of interim whilst Propeller's being populated and implemented, we're still using some of the old historic spreadsheets. And I seem to remember from the reports we got, there was quite a bit of concern raised at the time by reliance upon some of those historic spreadsheets because there were some issues around was all of the data on there sort of complete and accurate. So I'm just wondering, obviously, if we're loading data, presumably those spreadsheets are going to be one of the sources of that data. What checks we're doing to actually make sure that that data is actually historic data is actually still relevant and accurate, given the fact that the previous reports indicated that there were issues with the spreadsheets. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to come back on, councillor Reid?
Oh, thank you. Okay, fine. So Propeller went live in September. So that's how I come up with October, November and December for being the first quarter. Secondly, we are acutely aware, and it was actually Chris Stratford's closing meeting with me was to make sure, his advice was that the information that was loaded onto Propeller was absolutely accurate. So there's been some work done on that. I have a new officer appointed, head of technical services in Julie Martin, and that is at the top of her tasks. So I have every confidence to share with both here and with Fredco that indeed the information I will be bringing forward will be fully competent and will be worthy of its data that I present.
Thank you. Any more questions on this? Mark Whittington.
Sorry, my first question, I'm not quite sure if it was answered, was around why are electric, sorry, Robert, yeah, why are electric tests seem different to the others? Because the performance is, whilst it's improving, the sample checks do indicate there are still problems. So I just wonder if there's something specific about electric tests that's different. Thank you.
To be fair, the electrical has been one of the more difficult ones. It is down to manpower and the contractor's ability with labour, owing to COVID and everything else, for us to actually get this expedited. We were, to be fair, struggling in the 40% regions, and we have literally just in the last month got it to over 50. So we are going in the right direction, but it is literally manpower and the contractual arrangement. They are competent that we will be there by March, but that is the reasons.
Thank you. Rob, is it? Are we going on to the pink pages now? Jim, Ashley?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask about the training. How many staff have we actually trained if we began at the beginning of October? How many staff do we have to train? Is this training need about housing matters generally? Are we saying that there was no relevant training on kind of housing issues or just on the Propeller issues or compliance? When I first read this report, I thought, oh crumbs, this is the whole council. No, this is about training relevant to housing or compliance. And over what period have we looked at? Are we looking at a 1 year period of no training, or do we never have any training? How far back does it go? So that's my first question. My second question is, Propeller went in July, and can we say now that the transition from the legacy systems to Propeller is now complete? Because the auditor was unable to test back to Propeller to ensure the dates held matched that of the safety certifications. Is that all up to date now? Forgive me if you've told me and I haven't heard it yet. And with the Propeller system, how can we access the data? Is there any performance indicator that could be used by either this committee or the Rural Communities Committee or by Cabinet or anybody else to say, to kind of measure progress? So as I understand it, Propeller is measuring compliance, but can we see how, do we need the internal audit to come in to tell us whether or not our compliance rates are getting better? And will we be reported to, or is there a report we can look at on a regular basis? And I think it's worth saying how we got here in the first place. 3 or 4 years after Grenfell, we discovered, I think thanks to the new brooms that have come in, that our housing regulation was all over the place, that the checks were not in place, and we were a mess. Can you, Councillor Reid, can you give us an update as to where we are with the housing regulator, whether or not we're out of special measures or whatever the expression is, and whether how far are we on our way to a clean sheet after having been in such a pickle or such a mess a year ago? Thank you.
Okay. I would appreciate an email of the first part of your question to do with the staff training and how far it is in progress, and I will report back to you factually, because I don't have that information in my head and straight at hand. Where Propeller's concerned, once we've got the first quarter, it should be that that information should be readily accessible by everybody. That's the whole purpose of it. That what will happen with Propeller is with what's happening with Liberty Gas, as an example, is when they do an inspection, part of their results is that they load them on that particular day, what their findings are. So we will be up to date at all points with what we've actually done. We might not be up to date with all the inspections that we've done, but you will know, and everybody will know where we are, and that goes right across the board with each particular part of it. Where we are with the regulator is that the regulator currently describes that we are making a mammoth achievement so far. We are on improvement plan update of number 84 since I started this journey, and that will continue and is readily available from each 2-weekly meeting that is held with the chief executive, the leader, myself, and the head of housing. And I do bring regular updates to rural and communities as to what's happening. People get a little bit tired and a little bit bored of me continuing talking about various things, but like you, Councillor Baxter, where we were and the journey that we're taking, to me, is very important that I actually broadcast it to everybody at every opportunity, as I understand how important it is to our tenants, above all, and the houses that we provide and they live in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I never get bored of hearing about the measures that are being taken to improve safety of our residents. I don't know who is. So going through these, you mentioned on the staff training, sorry, the figures of how many. Okay, I recognise you don't have that to hand, but could you at least answer, or could somebody at least answer the question about what training are we talking about? Are we talking about training on how to use Propeller, or general training in housing safety? Is it are we just measuring how many staff have been on the course? Also, maybe it's the email question, but how many staff are we expecting to go through the course? Is it dozens, hundreds? In terms of the Propeller information being available, you said by everybody. When will we as members get an introduction as to how to interrogate Propeller and the figures on it? And I've heard that thing about making a mammoth improvement before. I'm sure that we've been told that for months. I mean, maybe they tell it you at every meeting. I don't know. But you also said that the notes of those meetings, which I think were weekly or fortnightly, are readily available. Where are they readily available? Because I certainly would like to look at them.
What's readily available is not the notes from the meetings, but indeed the improvement plans from each meeting that are actually made and reported on. So you understand the improvement plan number. Each time we have one that's presented, the information is available, what's on it, and the progress that is made. That's for the improvement plan. And where the training is concerned, let's not be confused here. There's training for Propeller and the first quarter's outcome. Once we are, I mean, it's a new system. We're obviously going to make sure that the training and the implementation is right. And then it will be possible for members to actually access what is on the Propeller system. That is, in my opinion, quite separate from the training that is ongoing within the housing team. And that's the information that I'd rather prefer to give you factually back by email, because I don't actually hold it to hand and it being absolutely up to date. And I would like to give it to you as a position statement as where we are in November, i.e. now. Okay.
Thank you. Just last try. Are we talking about training on anything for staff or just training on Propeller?
I thought I'd made it clear. Well, okay, I'll try again then. Propeller separately is being done. The training is ongoing. The initial training's been done. Our team are now actually loading the data, and they are monitoring the contractors that are also loading the data. That is Propeller. Quite separately is training that is ongoing for our compliance and indeed repairs and actions and progress on our properties. And I will give you that information by email. As I've said to you, I don't hold the accurate figures in my head. Is that clearer?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Reid. What I've heard is that until the beginning of October, we had no training on housing issues for any of our housing staff.
Can I just interrupt? I think we've had enough from that. We've dealt with that sufficiently. You've had the answer. Send an email to Councillor Reid and he will respond. And I think we move on to the next item on the agenda, which I believe, Rob, is item 5B, isn't it? The pink paper, is it?
There's still a bit more on 5A, Chair.
It's in your original pack, Chair, the one that we were sent out originally, rather than the great big bundle we were sent out several days later.
Oh, that's passing the book.
There we go. I think we're working now. So thank you, Chair. So the next item within the progress report, I'll only touch briefly at this point because it then goes into the restricted session in a moment. But the next audit to talk about was income and banking. So just on a high level, this audit was focusing on income and banking processes across 5 different departments within the council, which were customer services, markets, public toilets, Wyndham Park and cemeteries. The results of this audit resulted in 3 high, 2 medium and 5 low management actions being agreed, of which the detail will go through in the restricted session in a moment.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. For clarity, have we now covered, or have you just covered pages 43 to 56 of the original pack? If so, would anyone like to comment about the IT access controls, which are mentioned on page 50 as being a medium risk?
So this is just page 11 at the moment of the actual progress report, just the highlight. We'll go into the detail of the other actions, and I think the IT access is part of the continuous assurance, which we'll cover after the income and banking.
It does confuse me the way the layout is done by the internal audit. And as we're on income and banking, I think we ought to go on to agenda item 5B, which is the exclusion of the press and public at this stage. This is under section 100.
We've not yet finished with item 5A. I'd rather we didn't move the committee into closed session until we've dealt with all the items within 5A. The income and banking is referenced in 5A, but the substance of it is in 5B. So we've still got other matters on 5A to deal with, such as the continuous assurance findings, which Councillor Baxter's referenced in the IT comment, but there's still further presentation requirements for 5A. So can we continue with that item first?
Well, you're on about the continuous assurance at the bottom of the page. Right. It's confusing. I think the internal audit ought to proceed then.
Thank you, Chair. So that's all to say on income and banking for now on 5A. So I'll continue on to continuous assurance 2, which is the next report. So this is still on page 11 as well. So this one, this is where we test 10 key controls 4 times per year.
I was looking at that myself. I mean, it's at the bottom of 7 and then it obviously goes on to page 11.
Apologies, yes, page 7. So we got the progress report still, so it goes into continuous assurance 2.
Chair, I think we're on page 43 of the original pack. I can't see any page 7 or 11.
Page 11.
7. We appear to be confused because there's been so many reprints and renumbering, but the progress report I've got says 7 at the bottom to the right hand side and page 17 to the left, which has been in the pack. So just speak to the continuation assurance 2, and then we'll pick it up on that. It might be confusing, but I'm sure we've all got it. So if you'd like to carry on with talking about the continuous assurance, there's not much on that. You know, it's on pages 7 and 8, and there's not a lot there really.
So I'll just summarise the findings for continuous assurance 2. So this is an audit we do 4 times a year, testing 10 key controls. This is the second review we've done this year. And from this, there's no formal opinion provided for continuous assurance. It's very much a compliance audit. And from the last review, we raised 1 high, 2 medium and 6 low. I'll just summarise the 1 high and the 2 medium. So the first one is the high, and that was relating to supply bank amendment changes. There was 8 instances where we couldn't confirm whether these were verified back to the supplier to confirm they were accurate. The mediums, one related to complaints. So again, a sample of 10 complaints. 2 of these were not responded to in full or not responded to within the time. And as a result, one of those resulted in an additional complaint being raised. And then the final medium within this report relates to IT access. Again, from a sample of 10 leavers, 7 of these were not removed from Active Directory on their actual leave date, and the date ranges for when they were removed after their leave date ranged up to 49 days. I'll pause for any comments on this.
Mark Whittington.
Chairman, I think I'm not alone with the committee being frustrated by this, but I'm not sure how we're supposed to actually conduct our business when we keep getting these sort of reports that follow each other with different numbering systems. I don't think we've been really treated particularly very fairly about this, because I'm still trying to find this stuff. I'd like to ask questions on it. I'm sure the members of the committee would. And yet we've been hampered from doing it because of failures in administration. It's just not good enough, Mr. Chairman. It really isn't.
I think they've only sent out to you what was reported to the district council. I mean, Sue Woolley.
We did have this problem once before, Chairman, because I was desperately trying to use the pages online rather than a hard copy. And it was agreed that we would use one set of numbering. Now, our auditors are using their own numbers. I would ask that, as we're the customer, perhaps that we could use our internal council pages numbers, because I've got a very strategically placed staple in my set of papers. I without ripping everything apart, I can't see the auditor's numbers of the pages. And as I say, we've asked for this before, and if we're being ignored, then it's really not helpful, especially when it's such a thick bundle as well.
Chair, the numbers that we're actually referring to are the ones that we've been given to by the council on the council pack of papers.
Coming back, Mark. You're lost, aren't you? No. Well, the information that you just supplied about the high and the medium, I would have thought would have been in the assignment reports, but this is where we've always been adrift. You've got the assignment and then you have what happens in another report at the end. And I must admit, I can't find where it is that you've reported these highs and lows on the supply and the clients. No, it wouldn't.
I don't think we'd be able to see it, would we?
Well, I'd like to ask the internal audit an explanation as to where these highs and mediums are in their report, because they're certainly not on the pages 7 and 8, their numbers, and I can't see it later on.
object.
We'll have an adjournment for 10